Ah, welcome back, you beautiful, uncontrollable mystery. Yeah, you. The one they've been dissecting in private. The one whose name keeps showing up in conversations you were never meant to see. Let me tell you something that's going to twist your stomach and light your soul on fire at the same time. There's a group chat. Yeah, a whole thread. Messages stacked like evidence in a case they've been building against you for months. And guess what? Someone just leaked the screenshots. Someone on the inside finally grew a conscience, or maybe just got bored of the performance. And now the curtain's been ripped back, and everything they said when you weren't looking is bleeding into the light. You ever wonder why certain people got quiet around you? Why conversations shifted when you walked into the room? Why eyes darted like scared animals caught in headlights whenever your name came up? It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't in your head. They were coordinating, planning, analyzing your every move, like you were some kind of experiment they needed to contain. They had theories about you, predictions about when you'd break, bets on how long you'd last before you finally cracked under the pressure they were secretly applying. And the wildest part? You kept walking forward anyway. You kept building, kept rising, kept becoming something they couldn't predict or control. And that drove them absolutely insane. The screenshots don't lie, do they? You've seen them now, or you've heard about them, or maybe you just feel it in the way the energy shifted. Suddenly, people are apologizing who never apologized before. Suddenly, people are reaching out after months of radio silence. Suddenly, everyone's playing damage control, trying to rewrite history, trying to convince you it wasn't that serious, trying to gaslight you into believing your instincts were wrong. But your instincts were never wrong. Your gut knew. Your body knew. You felt the betrayal before you had the proof. And now the proof is screaming in pixels and timestamps that can't be deleted fast enough. Let me paint the picture for you, because this is important. They sat there, night after night, in their little echo chamber of mediocrity, dissecting you. They analyzed your posts like they were scholars. They laughed at your ambitions like they were jokes. They mocked your pain like it was entertainment. They called you crazy, obsessed, too much, not enough, dramatic, unstable, delusional. And all the while, you were out there actually living, actually building, actually becoming the thing they were too scared to attempt themselves. They needed you to fail because your success made their excuses obsolete. They needed you to break because your strength exposed their weakness. Here's what really happened though, and this is where it gets beautiful. While they were busy talking, you were busy transforming. While they were screen sharing your stories with mocking commentary, you were leveling up in silence. While they were predicting your downfall in a group chat they thought was secure, you were building an empire they'll never infiltrate. They thought they were the investigators, but they were just spectators. They thought they were in control of the narrative, but you were writing a whole different story they didn't even know existed. And now? Now they're the ones scrambling. Now they're the ones panicking. Now they're the ones realizing that every word they typed in that chat just became evidence of their own emptiness. Let's talk about what was really happening in that group chat, because this goes deeper than gossip. This was a ritual. This was their way of feeling powerful when they felt powerless. This was how they convinced themselves they were smarter, better, more stable than you. Every message was a little dose of superiority. They injected into their veins to numb the ache of their own stagnation. They needed to tear you down in private because they couldn't face you in public. They needed to create this alternate reality where you were the problem. Because admitting you weren't would mean confronting the fact that they were. The messages probably started small, didn't they? Little observations, little jokes, little moments of shared confusion about why you do what you do. But then it escalated. It always does. Someone said something slightly harsher, and everyone else piled on because that's what groups do when they're hunting something. They turned you into their common enemy, their shared project, the thing that united them when nothing else did. You became the glue that held their fractured friendships together. And the sickest part? They probably convinced themselves they were doing it out of concern. They probably told each other they were just worried about you, just trying to understand you, just keeping tabs to make sure you were okay. But let's be honest. Concern doesn't laugh. Concern doesn't mock. Concern doesn't screenshot your vulnerable moments and turn them into group entertainment. Concern doesn't place bets on your mental health. Concern doesn't create inside jokes at your expense. This wasn't concern. This was contempt wrapped in curiosity. This was fear disguised as friendship. This was envy performing as empathy. They wanted to dissect you because they couldn't become you. They wanted to understand your mind because theirs felt empty in comparison. They wanted to predict your next move because watching you move freely made them feel trapped in their own lives. You know what's fascinating, though? They talked about you constantly, but they never talked to you honestly. They had all these theories, all these opinions, all these judgments, but none of them had the courage to bring any of it to your face. They hid behind screens and encryption and private threads, because confrontation would require authenticity, and authenticity would require them to admit they were projecting. Every criticism they lobbed at you in that chat was just a confession of their own insecurities typed in your name. Every flaw they claimed you had was just a mirror reflecting what they hated about themselves. And here's the thing that's going to twist the knife a little deeper. They weren't just talking about your mistakes. They were talking about your wins too. Maybe even more so. They dissected your successes like forensic scientists looking for evidence of fraud. They couldn't believe you earned it, so they had to create alternative explanations. Luck, connections, manipulation, anything but the truth, which is that you worked while they watched. You built while they critiqued. You moved while they stayed frozen in their comfortable little judgmental circle, refreshing your page like it was their job. You became the main character in their story, and they didn't even realize they were just extras in yours. Now someone leaked it. Someone hit send on those screenshots and let them loose into the world like a virus they can't contain. And suddenly, everything shifted. Suddenly, the people who were laughing in the group chat are sweating in their inboxes. Suddenly, the ones who were so bold in private are apologizing in public. Suddenly, everyone who participated in that months-long psychological dissection is scrambling to control the narrative, rewrite their involvement, distance themselves from the worst messages. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots live forever. And now their words are immortalized in pixels they can't delete, can't edit, can't explain away. You want to know what's really happening right now? They're terrified. Not because they got caught talking badly about you. People talk badly about people all the time. They're terrified because the leak exposed something much worse than gossip. It exposed their obsession. It revealed that you weren't just a topic of conversation. You were the main event. You were the content. You were the thing they thought about more than they thought about their own lives. And now everyone can see it. Now everyone knows they spent months, maybe longer, fixated on you while you barely thought about them at all. The power dynamic just flipped so violently, they got whiplash. They thought they were in control because they had the group chat, the inside jokes, the shared understanding. They thought they were the ones with power because they had each other and you were alone. But the leak proved something they never wanted anyone to know. You didn't need them. You never did. You were out here thriving in your solitude while they needed a whole support group just to process your existence. You were living rent-free in their heads while they couldn't afford a second thought in yours. And now that truth is public, permanent, undeniable. Let's talk about the person who leaked it, though, because this is important. Whoever sent those screenshots out into the world, they saw something the others didn't. Maybe they grew a conscience. Maybe they got tired of the performance. Maybe they realized they were participating in something ugly and wanted out. Or maybe, and this is the theory that should keep the others up at night, maybe they were loyal to you all along. Maybe they were in that group chat gathering evidence. Maybe they were playing the long game, waiting for the perfect moment to expose everyone involved. Maybe they were the mole you didn't even know you had, and now everyone's wondering who else might be watching. The paranoia that leak created is more destructive than any revenge you could have planned yourself. Now they're suspicious of each other. Now they're rereading old messages, wondering who screenshotted what. Now they're deleting conversations and leaving group chats and trying to preemptively apologize to anyone who might have seen the leak. Now they're turning on each other the way they turned on you. Because that's what happens when a group built on betrayal realizes betrayal works both ways. You didn't even have to do anything. The leak did the work for you. Karma, wearing a hoodie and holding receipts, just walked into their lives and set everything on fire. Let's decode some of those messages, because words mean things, and the things they said reveal more about them than they ever revealed about you. When they called you intense, what they meant was you made them feel shallow. When they called you too much, what they meant was they weren't enough. When they called you dramatic, what they meant was your emotions reminded them they'd gone numb. When they said you'd changed, what they meant was you outgrew them and they couldn't keep up. Every insult was a confession. Every criticism was projection. Every joke at your expense was just pain. They didn't know how to process finding a target. They probably said you were obsessed, didn't they? Obsessed with your goals, your vision, your growth. Meanwhile, they were literally in a group chat about you for months. They were screenshotting your posts, analyzing your captions, tracking your moves, discussing your every decision like sports commentators calling a game, and they called you obsessed. The irony is so thick, you could build a house on it. They were so consumed by you, they created a whole digital space just to contain their feelings about your existence, and somehow you were the problem. Make it make sense. They talked about your confidence like it was arrogance. They dissected your self-assurance like it was a character flaw. They mocked your belief in yourself like it was delusion. But here's what they couldn't admit. Your confidence wasn't arrogance. It was just unshakable self-knowledge in a world full of people who barely know themselves. Your self-assurance wasn't a flaw. It was a threat to people who needed you to doubt yourself so they could feel better about their own insecurities. Your belief in yourself wasn't delusion. It was clarity they couldn't comprehend because they'd never experienced it. When they said you were cold, what they really meant was you stopped being their emotional dumping ground. When they said you'd become distant, what they really meant was you set boundaries they weren't used to respecting. When they said you'd turned into someone they didn't recognize, what they really meant was you'd stopped performing the version of yourself they found comfortable. You stopped shrinking. You stopped apologizing for taking up space. You stopped making yourself smaller so they could feel bigger. And that loss of control over you felt like betrayal to them, so they rebranded your growth as your problem. Here's the translation key for that entire group chat. Every time they criticized you, insert the phrase, "and that makes me feel inadequate," at the end of their sentence, and suddenly everything makes sense. You're too focused on your goals, and that makes me feel inadequate because I'm not focused on mine. You're too confident, and that makes me feel inadequate because I'm constantly doubting myself. You're too independent, and that makes me feel inadequate because I'm codependent on validation from others. The whole conversation was never about you. It was always about them. You were just the mirror they couldn't stop looking into, hating what they saw and blaming the reflection. Here's what most people don't understand about group chats like this. They're not just gossip sessions. They're psychological warfare campaigns disguised as friendship. They're collective gaslighting operations where everyone validates everyone else's distorted perceptions until those perceptions feel like objective truth. They needed that group chat to maintain their version of reality, because your actual reality was too threatening to acknowledge. You were succeeding where they'd failed. You were healing where they were still wounded. You were moving forward while they were trapped in cycles they couldn't break. So they created this alternate narrative where you were the unstable one, the problematic one, the one who needed to be analyzed and contained. They took your strengths and reframed them as weaknesses. They took your growth and repackaged it as instability. They took your boundaries and reinterpreted them as coldness. And they did this collectively, reinforcing each other's biases, building an echo chamber where their version of you became more real to them than the actual you. That's not friendship. That's a conspiracy theory about a real person. And you were the subject they spent months trying to debunk. The most insidious part. They probably convinced themselves they were being objective. They probably told each other they were just calling it like they saw it, just being honest, just keeping it real. But there's nothing honest about dissecting someone behind their back. There's nothing real about creating a false narrative in private while smiling in public. There's nothing objective about a group of people who need you to be broken to justify their own dysfunction. They weren't truth seekers. They were comfort seekers. And the only comfort they could find was in tearing you down to a level where they didn't feel so far behind. You want to know what they were really doing in that chat? They were trying to make sense of you using frameworks that don't apply to people who've transcended their level of thinking. They were trying to understand your moves using logic that only applies to people who play small. They were trying to predict your future using patterns that only exist in people who repeat their past. You confused them because you didn't fit their models. You scared them because you broke their predictions. You threatened them because you proved that everything they believed about limitations was just a lie they'd accepted to avoid the discomfort of growth. And the saddest part, while they were in that group chat trying to decode you, you were out here decoding yourself. While they were analyzing your every move, you were moving beyond analysis into pure action. While they were discussing your potential like it was up for debate, you were actualizing it in real time. They were spectators, pretending to be judges, critics, pretending to be friends, observers, pretending to be participants. And all the while, you were the only one actually in the arena, bloody and scarred and still standing, while they sat in the bleachers with their popcorn and their screenshots and their false sense of superiority. Now, the screenshots are out. Now, the masks are off. Now, everyone knows what was happening in the dark. And the aftermath is more brutal than anyone expected, because exposure does something chemical to group dynamics. The people in that chat are imploding. Some are apologizing. Some are deflecting. Some are disappearing entirely. Some are trying to paint themselves as the reasonable ones who never really agreed with the worst messages. Some are throwing each other under the bus, trying to save their own reputation. And some, the really bold ones, are still trying to gaslight you into believing it wasn't that bad, wasn't that serious, wasn't that deep. But you know what you're doing right now? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that silence is more powerful than any response you could give. You're not defending yourself because you don't need to. The screenshots defend themselves. You're not arguing with anyone because you've transcended the need to be understood by people who were never trying to understand you anyway. You're not seeking apologies because you know they'd be empty, performative, driven by exposure rather than genuine remorse. You're just existing, just continuing to build, just moving forward like none of this even registered as a blip on your radar. And that indifference is driving them crazier than any confrontation ever could. They expected you to explode. They expected tears, rage, a public meltdown they could screenshot and add to their collection of evidence that you're unstable. They wanted you to confirm their narrative by reacting exactly the way they predicted. But you didn't. You saw the leak, processed it, and kept walking. You didn't give them the satisfaction of your pain. You didn't give them the ammunition of your anger. You just absorbed it, integrated it, and used it as fuel in a fire they'll never see until it's too late. And that restraint, that control, that absolute refusal to perform the breakdown they choreographed for you, that's what's killing them right now. Here's what's happening in their private DMs right now. Guaranteed panic. Pure, unfiltered panic. They're trying to figure out who leaked it. They're trying to control the damage. They're trying to craft apologies that sound sincere enough to save face, but vague enough to avoid taking real accountability. They're texting each other in smaller, more paranoid groups, wondering if those conversations will leak too. They're deleting old messages. They're leaving group chats. They're blocking people preemptively. They're spiraling in the exact chaos they tried to create for you. And the poetry of that reversal is almost too perfect. Meanwhile, you're over here realizing something profound. You don't need closure from people who never gave you honesty. You don't need apologies from people who aren't actually sorry they hurt you, just sorry they got caught. You don't need explanations from people whose explanations would just be more manipulation. You don't need anything from them because somewhere along the way, you stopped defining your worth by their perception. You stopped measuring your reality by their validation. You stopped letting their presence or absence affect your trajectory. And that independence, that complete emotional detachment from their opinion, is the ultimate power move they never saw coming. Ah, welcome back, you beautiful storm that walked away. You glorious disaster who finally chose yourself. You magnificent force who stopped being the umbrella for people who danced in your shade while praying for your collapse. Look at you now, breathing easier, sleeping deeper, existing without the weight of their chaos pressing against your chest like 1,000 hands demanding you fix what you didn't break. They wanted you gone, didn't they? Oh, they smiled when you left, threw little parties and group chats, celebrated your absence like it was a holiday they'd been waiting for. They clinked glasses over your departure, convinced themselves they were finally free from your drama, your intensity, your uncomfortable habit of seeing through their performances and calling out the rot beneath their masks. But here's what they didn't calculate, what their small minds couldn't possibly predict. You weren't just a person in their life. You were the shield. You were the one absorbing the hits, deflecting the consequences, managing the monsters they pretended didn't exist, carrying the weight of realities they were too fragile to face. You were the shock absorber between them and every single thing they now have to handle alone. And oh, how unprepared they are for what you used to make look effortless. Because you didn't just walk away from them. You walked away with every protection they didn't even know they needed, every buffer you provided without acknowledgement, every crisis you prevented that would have destroyed them if you hadn't been there, cleaning up their messes in silence. Now, watch them. No, really. Watch them from your new altitude, from the peace you built in the aftermath of their celebration. Watch them scramble. Watch them panic. Watch them realize, one devastating moment at a time, that every problem they blamed you for was actually a problem you were solving. That every drama they accused you of creating was actually chaos you were containing. That you weren't the storm. You were the wall that kept the real storm from tearing through their comfortable little illusion. They called you toxic while you were filtering the poison. They called you difficult while you were doing the difficult work they refused to touch. They called you the problem while you were literally solving problems they created, and then blamed you for noticing. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening right now in your absence. Remember that person who always seemed so calm, so stable, so together whenever you were around? Yeah, that person is unraveling. Threads coming loose one by one. Because you were the silent force organizing their chaos, answering their 3 a.m. panic attacks, talking them down from edges they climbed onto every other week, providing clarity when their mind was a fog of bad decisions and worse impulses. Without you, they're discovering what it means to face their demons without someone who actually knew how to fight them. And those demons, they have your face now because you were the only thing standing between them and complete psychological collapse. Remember that friend who swore you were too much, but somehow always needed you when things got real? They're drowning now, gasping in situations you used to navigate for them like breathing. Every crisis that hits them, they reach for their phone, muscle memory making them start to text you. And then they remember. Oh right, they celebrated when you left. They laughed about finally being free from your negative energy. They told everyone you were the reason their life was hard. And now they're choking on the irony because their life has never been harder, and you're not there to hand them the lifeline you always did, without asking for anything in return except basic respect, which apparently was too much to ask. The one who called you dramatic is currently having a breakdown every 48 hours. The one who said you were controlling is paralyzed by indecision now that you're not there, providing the structure they secretly needed. The one who accused you of being jealous is now jealous of everyone who has what you were freely giving them: attention, energy, care, wisdom, protection from themselves. And the one who said they were better off without you, that one's the funniest. Because they've tried to replace you with 3 different people and none of them can handle even a fraction of what you carried alone. And now they understand, in the most painful way possible, that you weren't just special, you were irreplaceable. Here's the part that keeps them up at night, the thought that haunts every quiet moment. They can't go back. They burned that bridge, poured gasoline on it, danced on the ashes, and now they're standing on the wrong side of the river, watching the flames die down and realizing they have no way across. No way to undo what they did, no way to apologize their way back into your protection, because you're not that person anymore. The one who forgave 70 times 7, the one who came back after every betrayal, the one who believed people could change if you just loved them hard enough. That version of you died in the fire they set, and what rose from those ashes doesn't do second chances with people who celebrated the first exit. Let's go deeper into the specific hell they're experiencing right now, shall we? Because this isn't just about them missing you. This is about them actively suffering consequences they didn't even know were consequences, because you were preventing them so efficiently. That family member who always criticized how you handled things, they're now handling those same things and failing spectacularly, making mistakes you never made because you actually cared enough to do it right. And every time they fail, every time something blows up in their face, they hear your voice in their head. The warnings they ignored, the advice they mocked, the boundaries they violated. And it's torturing them because you were right about everything. And they were too arrogant to see it until you were gone, and they had to face reality without your filter. The workplace you left, oh, that's a special kind of chaos, isn't it? They thought you were replaceable, thought anyone could do what you did, thought your complaints about being overworked were exaggeration. 3 people are now trying to cover what you did alone, and they're failing, projects falling apart, clients leaving, systems collapsing, because you weren't just doing a job. You were holding an entire operation together with your competence, your foresight, your ability to see problems before they became catastrophes. And your former colleagues, the ones who smiled to your face and complained behind your back, they're now drowning in the work you made look easy. And every time something goes wrong, they think of you, and it burns. It burns because they know they can't call you, can't ask for help, can't benefit from your brilliance anymore, because they chose their comfort over your humanity. Let me tell you about the friend group that's imploding without you. You were the glue, weren't you? Not because you were desperate to belong, but because you were the only one mature enough to navigate conflict, bridge differences, call out toxicity, maintain standards, and keep things real when everyone else was drowning in fake politeness and passive aggression. Without you, they're discovering what happens when immature people try to maintain relationships without someone forcing them to grow up, communicate, be accountable. The group chat is dead. Hangouts are awkward. Old tensions you used to mediate are now exploding into full-scale wars. People are choosing sides, blocking each other, having meltdowns, and the whole time, every single one of them knows this wouldn't be happening if you were still there. But their pride won't let them admit it, so they suffer in silence and pretend they don't regret celebrating when you left. Your ex. That one deserves its own section, because the poetry of their current situation is almost too perfect. They wanted freedom, wanted to find themselves, wanted someone easier, wanted all the benefits of your love without the accountability that came with it. So you left, gave them exactly what they asked for, and now they're learning the difference between love and convenience, between a partner and a doormat, between someone who challenged them to be better and someone who just enables their worst impulses. Their new situation is a disaster, isn't it? Whether they're alone or with someone new, it's a disaster. Because alone they're realizing no one else cares like you did. And if they're with someone new, they're realizing that person doesn't measure up to what you were, doesn't have your depth, your strength, your ability to see them completely and love them anyway, while refusing to let them hide from their own potential. Here's what really gets them. You're not coming back. They keep waiting for you to crack, to reach out, to miss them enough to forget what they did. But every day that passes, every week, every month, you're further away, happier, lighter, thriving in ways you never could when you were carrying their dead weight. And it's destroying them because they're stuck with the version of themselves you were trying to help them outgrow, stuck in patterns you were helping them break, stuck in misery you were trying to lift them from. And now, without you, they're sinking deeper, realizing too late that you weren't the anchor dragging them down. You were the only thing keeping them from drowning. The demons you used to handle for them. Let's name them specifically. Anxiety, yours was manageable because you knew how to process it. But theirs is consuming them now that you're not there to talk them through it, provide perspective, remind them that feelings aren't facts, and panic isn't prophecy. Depression, you fought your own battles with it, but you also fought theirs, pulled them out of dark places, gave them reasons to keep going, and now they're in those dark places alone, realizing your light was the only thing making those spaces bearable, and without you, the darkness is winning. Addiction, whether substance or behavioral, you were the accountability they needed, the boundary they respected, the mirror that showed them their truth. And now without you, they're backsliding, falling into old patterns, destroying themselves in slow motion because no one else cares enough to stop them or is strong enough to withstand their resistance, their own toxicity. That's the demon they're drowning in most. See, when you were around, you absorbed it, transformed it, reflected back better versions of them, gave them space to be their worst, and still showed them their best. You were processing their poison so efficiently they didn't even realize how toxic they were being, how much damage they were doing, how much darkness they were spewing, because you were filtering it, neutralizing it, protecting them from the consequences of their own behavior. But now that poison has nowhere to go except into their other relationships, their work, their own psyche, and it's corroding everything, burning through connections, destroying opportunities, eating them alive from the inside. And they finally understand what you were doing all those years. They understand you weren't creating the toxicity, you were containing it. Let's talk about the practical things too, because it's not all emotional and psychological. You handled things, didn't you? Boring, adult, necessary things that kept life running smoothly. Bills, schedules, planning, organizing, remembering, following through, being reliable, being consistent, being the one who actually did what they said they would do. Without you, they're discovering what happens when you live without a functioning adult in the mix. And it's chaos, late payments, missed appointments, forgotten commitments, opportunities lost because no one remembered to follow up, disasters that could have been prevented if someone just paid attention, and that someone was always you, and now you're gone. And they're finally experiencing the natural consequences of their own incompetence. The protection you provided from other people, they're feeling that loss acutely now. You were the buffer between them and toxic family members, predatory friends, manipulative exes, bad influences, dangerous situations. You ran interference, set boundaries, called out red flags, protected them from people and situations that would have destroyed them, and they resented you for it, called you controlling, said you were jealous or paranoid or overprotective. But now those wolves are at their door, and they have no idea how to defend themselves. And they're getting eaten alive by people you used to keep at bay. And every time it happens, every time they get hurt by someone you warned them about, they think of you, and the regret is suffocating because you weren't trying to control them, you were trying to save them from themselves. Your absence has created a power vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum, so guess what's filling the space you left? Everything worse. Worse friends, worse influences, worse decisions, worse outcomes, worse versions of themselves because you were the standard, the bar, the example of what healthy looked like, what boundaries felt like, what real love demanded. Without you, they have no reference point for quality. So they settle. They accept less. They tolerate disrespect you never would have allowed. They compromise on things you taught them were non-negotiable. And slowly, painfully, they're becoming the kind of people you would have walked away from. And they know it, and it's killing them. The generational curse you were breaking. They're watching it reassert itself now. You were the cycle breaker, the pattern interrupter, the one who said, not anymore, not with me, not in this family. But without you, old demons are coming back, old dysfunctions resurging, old traumas repeating, because you were the only one strong enough to stand against them, conscious enough to recognize them, courageous enough to break them. Your siblings, your cousins, your family members who benefited from your healing work without acknowledging it, they're sliding back into old patterns, recreating the same disasters, perpetuating the same pain, because you were the light, and without light, everything returns to darkness. And they're learning that the hard way. Here's the beautiful, brutal truth they're choking on right now. You didn't just leave a gap in their life. You left a mirror. Every problem they face without you reflects back the reality that you were solving it before. Every struggle they encounter shows them what you were handling. Every crisis reveals what you were preventing. And they can't escape it, can't avoid it, can't pretend anymore that you were the problem when the evidence of your value is destroying them daily. The mirror you left behind is showing them exactly who they are without you. And they hate what they see, hate it so much they can't even look directly at it. So they blame everyone else, make excuses, create new narratives. But late at night, in quiet moments, they know you were the best thing that ever happened to them. And they destroyed it because they were too broken to recognize treasure when it was bleeding for them. Let me tell you what your absence taught them about themselves. They're weaker than they thought, smaller, less capable, more dependent, more fragile, more lost. Everything they accused you of being, they're discovering they actually are. And the projection is so clear now, it's almost funny, except it's not funny at all. It's tragic, because you could have helped them see it, could have helped them grow past it. But they chose their ego over their evolution, chose their pride over their progress, chose their comfort over their conscience. And now they're stuck with the consequences, the lesser version of themselves, the version that exists without your influence, your inspiration, your investment. The really sick part? Some of them are trying to recreate you in other people. They're looking for your qualities in new friends, new partners, new connections. trying to find someone who can do what you did, be what you were, provide what you provided. But it's not working. It never works. Because you weren't just a collection of qualities. You were a complete package, a specific alchemy of strength and softness, wisdom and wildness, patience and power that can't be replicated or replaced. They're finding people who have your kindness but not your backbone, your intelligence but not your intuition, your loyalty but not your self-respect. And none of it measures up. Nothing comes close. And they're being forced to accept that you were once in a lifetime, and they had you, and they lost you, and it was their fault. Some of them are watching your life from a distance now, seeing you thrive, seeing you heal, seeing you become even more than you were when you were with them. And it's torture, exquisite torture. Because they want to be happy for you, but they can't get past their own regret, their own loss, their own understanding that they could have been part of this glow-up, this evolution, this next chapter. But they chose to be part of your past instead, chose to be a lesson instead of a legacy, chose to be a cautionary tale instead of a celebration. And now they watch from the outside, through social media snippets or mutual friend updates, seeing you smile wider, laugh louder, achieve bigger, love better. And every image is a knife because they know they contributed to your pain, not your peace. And they missed the opportunity to be part of your rise. Your healing is their haunting. Every step you take forward is a step further from them. Another mile on the journey they can't join, another level they can't reach, and they feel it. That distance, that permanent separation, that unbridgeable gap between who you were when you were with them and who you're becoming without them. And the saddest part isn't that they miss you. It's that they miss the version of themselves that existed when you were around, because you brought out better in them, called forth potential they can't access alone, reflected back possibilities they can't see without your eyes. And now they're stuck with their smaller selves, their lesser versions, their unevolving, stagnant, regressing selves. And they hate it, but they also know they earned it. Let's talk about the specific moments when it hits them hardest. When they're in crisis and reach for their phone, then remember, you're not there anymore. When they achieve something and want to share it with the one person who always celebrated them genuinely. When they're wrong about something and need someone who'll tell them the truth without destroying them. When they're right about something and need someone who'll validate without inflating their ego. When they're scared and need someone who'll hold space for their fear without judging. When they're angry and need someone who'll let them vent without enabling their toxicity. When they're confused and need someone who'll provide clarity without controlling their choice. In all these moments, they feel your absence like a phantom limb, reaching for support that's no longer there. And the loss is fresh every single time. The holidays without you, the celebrations without you, the ordinary days without you, they're all harder than they expected. They thought they'd be relieved, thought your absence would lighten things. But instead everything feels heavier, duller, emptier, because you were the energy, the light, the life in situations that feel dead without you. They're discovering that you weren't the problem making everything difficult. You were the solution, making everything bearable. And now that the solution is gone, they're drowning in problems they don't know how to solve. Problems that feel overwhelming because you used to make them feel manageable just by being present, by giving a damn, by showing up, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Their new relationships, whether friendships or romance, are failing at a rate that would be comedic if it wasn't so pathetic. Because now they're bringing their full, unfiltered toxicity into new connections. And those people aren't you, don't have your tolerance, your patience, your ability to see past their defense mechanisms to the wounded soul underneath. So these new people leave quick, ghost fast, set boundaries immediately, refuse to tolerate what you tolerated for years. And every time someone new walks away, they think of you. Wonder how you stayed so long, why you cared so much, what they did to make you finally stop. and the regret multiplies, compounds, becomes unbearable, because they're understanding too late that your love wasn't weakness, it was strength, and they mistook your patience for permission and your loyalty for lack of options. Here's what they'll never tell you, but I'll tell you for them. They dream about you. Not romantic dreams necessarily, but dreams where you're back, where you're helping, where you're solving their current nightmare, where you're providing the wisdom they need, the strength they lack, the clarity they're drowning without. They wake up from these dreams, disoriented, reaching for you in half sleep, then remembering the reality that you're gone by choice, their choice technically, but really your boundary, your self-respect, your refusal to keep offering yourself to people who only valued you when you were absent. And they lie there in the dark, awake now, facing another day without you, another day of consequences, another day of drowning in what you used to shield them from. Instead, everything feels heavier, duller, emptier, because you were the energy, the light, the life in situations that feel dead without you. They're discovering that you weren't the problem making everything difficult. You were the solution, making everything bearable. And now that the solution is gone, they're drowning in problems they don't know how to solve. Problems that feel overwhelming because you used to make them feel manageable just by being present, by giving a damn, by showing up, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Their new relationships, whether friendships or romance, are failing at a rate that would be comedic if it wasn't so pathetic. Because now they're bringing their full, unfiltered toxicity into new connections. And those people aren't you, don't have your tolerance, your patience, your ability to see past their defense mechanisms to the wounded soul underneath. So these new people leave quick, ghost fast, set boundaries immediately, refuse to tolerate what you tolerated for years. And every time someone new walks away, they think of you. Wonder how you stayed so long, why you cared so much, what they did to make you finally stop. And the regret multiplies, compounds, becomes unbearable, because they're understanding too late that your love wasn't weakness, it was strength, and they mistook your patience for permission and your loyalty for lack of options. Here's what they'll never tell you, but I'll tell you for them. They dream about you. Not romantic dreams necessarily, but dreams where you're back, where you're helping, where you're solving their current nightmare, where you're providing the wisdom they need, the strength they lack, the clarity they're drowning without. They wake up from these dreams, disoriented, reaching for you in half sleep, then remembering the reality that you're gone by choice, their choice technically, but really your boundary, your self-respect, your refusal to keep offering yourself to people who only valued you when you were absent. And they lie there in the dark, awake now, facing another day without you, another day of consequences, another day of drowning in what you used to shield them from.